Hello, and welcome to today's Here's to Your Health podcast. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Don Lintzman, your host. My guest on the Here's to Your Health podcast today is Terry Brockman. Terry is the Director of Laboratory Services here at CCMH. And Terry, thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome, Don.
The occasion of our podcast today is that this is National Laboratory Professionals Week, and we want to make sure we recognize everybody who's a part of all of that. And you've actually been a laboratory professional for 43 years.
That's right.
And all of those spent with CCMH, correct?
Yes, I have. Yep.
Yeah.
Everything there.
How's that gone, Terry? I mean, 43 years, I mean, obviously different than you started than what it looks like today.
Yeah, things change. Of course, I guess everything changes. So, but yeah, it's different. Sometimes it's kind of hard to remember back what it was 43 years ago, but yeah, I mean, medicine's come a long ways in the last 43 years.
Yeah,
so,
technology has changed tremendously.
Yes, it is. All for the better.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, because we can do a lot of things today maybe we weren't able to do a few years ago.
We can do a lot of things, and we can do it a lot faster than what we ever used to. So.
Yeah, so let's just start at the beginning and talk about what a medical laboratory scientist is, because I've never considered you to be a scientist, but yes, that's what I guess you are.
That's kind of what the designation is now. Medical laboratory scientist. Used to call us medical technologists, was what it was, but they've changed the name of it over the years to think that it says more about what we do, so they call us medical laboratory scientists now instead of medical technologists. But we are highly educated individuals. We perform tests on blood and body fluids and tissues, and this aids the physicians in their diagnosis and management and the treatment of disease. Medical laboratory scientists, we interpret data, analyze results, develop and evaluate new tests and procedures. We manage a lot of information, and we communicate with other members of the healthcare team. And actually, approximately 85% of medical decisions are based on a laboratory test. They either base it on that, or it is confirmed. A diagnosis is confirmed by lab tests. So that's saying a lot.
Yeah, and I think what people have to understand about medicine, and there are some people I think who still don't get this, they think that a diagnosis should be immediate. And I do realize that some of medicine is intuitive, but most of medicine has to do with eliminating the things that it is not. In other words, what condition do you not have?
Right. And
then you figure out what it is you do have. And a lot of times it is the medical tests that allow that to take place.
Correct. Yeah. A lot of times, like I said, there's a lot of ruling out, but it's a big job, and but like I said, there's a lot of good things that we do, and we do help the clinician. We're kind of kind of the guys behind the scenes. I mean, people don't really recognize us as much as what they do other professionals in healthcare, because we really aren't out there in the forefront. People don't see us, but what we do is very, very important.
So. A little bit like the wizard on the Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, right?
Something like that.
Yeah, a lot like that. You are the men behind the curtain.
Something like that.
So one thing that we hear a lot, and I'm aware of, is that there are a significant number of jobs as medical laboratory scientists. And to be honest, it is a field where I don't think that there are quite enough people who are currently studying for it.
Right, yeah. And again, it does, there's just, people just don't know about us, and so it's not something that they really, look at going into, things like, radiology or pharmacy or, nursing, those kind of things they know about. They just don't know so much about lab techs. In fact, people that have come into our hospital as students say they really never had heard of it until they kind of were introduced to it in college as an alternative to something else. But there is a big shortage of lab techs nationwide, and most of the students that we have that come out, they have multiple opportunities to go to work. I mean, they have job offers well before they ever get out of school. So.
It's probably not as sexy or glamorous as doing a lot of other things in healthcare, Terry, where you're out in front of patients. And I suppose there are probably a lot of people who look at this like, again, you're testing bodily fluids and blood and so on and so forth, and people are going, heck, I don't want to do any of that. But I don't think it shouldn't be characterized that way, because I don't believe the ick factor is kind of low.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's not like that's all we do all day long. I mean, a lot of times anything you do in healthcare can be kind of have a couple icky times here and there, but yeah, it's not that that we do it that way. I mean, we do operate a lot of equipment, a lot of machines, things that we used to do by hand that maybe weren't quite so pleasant. Now it's basically done on a machine. So the technology is helped out there. So.
My guest on the podcast today is Terry Brockman. Terry is the Director of Lab Services here at CCMH. 43 years in laboratory services. And Terry, congratulations. I understand that you're going to be retiring here soon.
I am. A couple of months down the road, I'm gonna hang it up. Like I said, it'll be 43 years, and yeah, it's time for me to go, and time for some new people to take over. So I'm really excited about it.
It's good. Well, we're going to honor you this week as part of a Medical Laboratory Scientist Week, but we'll make sure that we really honor you when it comes time for your retirement. One of the things that people always talk about, we just got done talking about what medical laboratory scientists do, and the fact that we need more of those. And then, of course, the next question anymore these days is, well, what kind of money can I make doing that?
Yeah, it's kind of depending on where you are and the size of the facility you're in, the type of job that you have. But usually coming out of school, most people can expect to make around $50,000 a year or even up. Again, depends on where you're at, geographically, or like I said, what kind of facilities you're in. There are higher salaries. There's differentials for working evenings or nights and weekends, those type of things, so that can help you make a little bit more money. And then there's also supervisory and management positions that you can eventually work into, that obviously where you can make more money doing that. So.
And I think, you've been doing this for 43 years, so probably one of the reasons why somebody can exist in a job for that long is the fact that you have a fair amount of variety of things that you do in a given day. And there may be people who are thinking about, well, I don't know much about lab testing, but boy, that sounds like a boring deal. But when you really look at it, the scope of testing that you learn about when you become a medical laboratory scientist is actually very impressive, and it takes a pretty smart person to be able to do all this stuff.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of different things that we do go through in our schooling, a lot of different areas of the laboratory. Some of them are like clinical chemistry, which that's testing for chemical analytes in the blood. Our hematology, which is examination of blood, counting the different types of cells, looking at different types of cells in the blood. Urinalysis, which we look at the detection of components and the elements that are in the urine. Microbiology, where we culture things, we stain things up for looking for microorganisms, and then we also do identification of these microorganisms. And immunohematology, which is the blood typing and the cross-matching of blood for patients. And then immunology, which is detecting different antibodies that are in the blood using various tests. And then some of the newer areas right now are flow cytometry and molecular diagnostics.
And it takes a smart guy to do that stuff, because I understood very little of what you just talked about.
Yeah. Well, it takes somebody that, you got to like science. You have to kind of like your science area, so that does require that. But it can be fairly interesting. You can like here we at our hospital, everybody is what we call a generalist, so they work in all these kind of areas. Sometimes you can specialize. You can specialize in just one area. You can specialize in blood banking, or you can specialize in microbiology or chemistry, if that's something you want to do. So like I said, but in our facility, we get a chance to do everything. So you do get a variety of things. You don't just get locked into doing one thing all day long. You have a variety of things that you do.
Yeah, I think the variety of all of that is what keeps people interested. It's what keeps it fresh. But maybe one question that follows on with that is, the only place that laboratory medical scientists work in hospitals. Are there other areas that people can work in?
Yeah, there is. You can, obviously you can work in a hospital, you can work in clinics, you can work in public health, research, there's private laboratories, you can get into the manufacturing, where the companies that manufacturing the instrumentation that we use, or, with supplies and equipment, and you can work in state and national crime labs, physicians' offices, fertility labs, you can get into, biotechnology and food and cosmetics industry. So there's just a whole host of things you can do. You don't actually always have to work in the lab. You can get outside of the lab and work in a lot of other businesses that work with the lab, but you're not actually doing the lab work. So.
Yeah, and I think that we do get this impression that, well, if you're going to work in a laboratory, chances, especially medical, you're going to be working in a hospital somewhere, but evidently that is not true. And I think that's the other part of it. You know, we talk about a shortage of technologists, of scientists in hospital labs. If we have that shortage, then we know that everybody else in all of those other areas probably is also experiencing a shortage. And Terry, how long does it take actually to go to school for this? I mean, is it a 2-year program, 4-year program?
Actually, it's both. You can do 2 years. There's a 2-year programs at most community colleges. It's what we call a medical laboratory technician. And that qualifies you to work in a laboratory. And then also there is a 4-year degree, which I still call medical technologist, but it's the medical laboratory science program. And that's a 4-year degree. You get a bachelor's degree. And that involves a lot more of the theory, and it delves a lot more into how things work and that kind of thing. So more so than what the 2-year degree, but both of those degrees do allow you to work in a laboratory.
And it sounds to me like there are a lot of different options for people. Some that are maybe lower cost, some that are maybe higher cost. But it all depends upon what your point of view is and what your appetite is for education. Some of those kinds of things. My guest on the Here's to Your Health podcast today is Terry Brockman. Terry is the Director of Laboratory Services here at CCMH. We're talking about Medical Laboratory Scientists Week and celebrating that because we have great people doing that for us here at CCMH. Probably one thing that people would need to know is that there probably is some certified, there are some national certifications or state certifications that you have to, even if you go to school, you graduate, so on and so forth. I mean, you still have to get a certification from somebody to be able to do this. Right,
yeah, and you can. Both the 2- and 4-year degree, when you finish, you can take a certification exam, and of course the programs all require you basically to take the exam. And you take a national certification exam, and but there, unlike some areas of the healthcare, we're not licensed as such. There are only a handful of states in the country that actually require you to be licensed. Iowa is actually not one of those, but there are some states that require licensure, but that's not a requirement in most states. But most hospitals do require you, or want you to have the certification exam taken when you finish up your program, so that hopefully you pass that, and then you have your certification. So,
if there's somebody who's listening to our podcast today, Terry, who'd like more information about becoming a certified medical laboratory scientist, where do you think they could go to learn more about that?
Well, they could go online and look at a couple different sites. One's the American Society of Clinical Laboratory Science, and that's www.ascls.org. And the other one would be the American Society of Clinical Pathology, which is www.ascp.org.
And what about people who might have questions locally? Would you be willing to talk to anybody who would want to perhaps learn more about the program, or even if there's a student who would like to come shadow in the lab for maybe a week or a couple of weeks? Is that something that we would be willing to do?
Absolutely, absolutely. We take students in every so often. We do high school students. We do some college students. Bring them in, just shadow us. That's acceptable. They can contact us by email, or they can actually call into the hospital to the lab, and be more than happy to talk to them and answer any questions that they might have.
Great. Terry, I thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome, Don.
My guest on the podcast today has been Terry Brockman. Terry, 43-year veteran of the CCMH Lab Department and Director of Laboratory Services. I'm Don Lintzman, your host for the Here's to Your Health podcast. Have a great day.